Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Literary Lore. Today we'll be covering a poem that many people have read. Or rather, I know that it's one that has been covered in schools across this country. It's so ubiquitous that it has a role in the ever-inspirational Dead Poets Society. I'm of course talking about The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. As always, this poem is readily available online, and I have left a link to the poem in the description. So let's dive in. Robert Frost was an exceptionally successful writer. He received countless awards and was even the United States Poet Laureate for a span of time. That meant he was recognized as essentially the representative poet for the entire US. It's pretty cool, but like many creative minds, he had dark moments. In 1885, at 11, his father died of tuberculosis. 15 years later, he lost his mother to cancer. He had many more family members die far too early, and himself suffered from depression for much of his life. All of that is to say that this poem was written from a much lighter moment. You see, Frost had a friend, another writer named Edward Thomas, and while spending time in England with his friend, the two would take long walks through the woods. On one of these walks, they reached a fork in the road, and his friend's indecision inspired him to write this piece. With the setting set, let's get to it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. This narrative poem describes the path laid before the speaker. It's fairly straightforward and begins the general rhythm each stanza will take. The 5 lines use an A-B-A-A-B rhyme scheme. He looks at one path as far down as it goes, then took the other as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. This winding stanza says he picked one because the path seemed wilder, basically saying that he did what no one else had. This is immediately undercut by his statement that the two looked similar, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. He points out that neither looked particularly different, and that while he would like to walk the other path, he doubts he'd be returning. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The poem concludes with the speaker sighing, perhaps with wistful contentment, and saying he will think of this moment for years to come. That this choice to take the path he chose changed his entire life. Now, it's a shortish poem and seems pretty straightforward. That said, there are 2 major interpretations that are completely at odds with each other. The first, which is presented popularly by Robin Williams in the Dead Poets Society, is that every choice you make matters, and that nonconformity is the key to changing the world. Now that's a solid and valid philosophy. The majority of that interpretation, though, comes from the final stanza. The sigh, the difference, but there's a pretty major point against it, ignoring all of the rest of my previous explanation from a few moments ago. When Robert Frost mentioned his inspiration for the poem, Edward, he also explained exactly what it was he was writing about. It was a joke. He was playfully making fun of his friend's indecisiveness and the way he'd exaggerate the importance of mundane choices. The final stanza is ironic, a sarcastic view of that same mentality. We as the reader noted that the first 4 stanzas pointed out the similarities between each path. The 2 paths are not different. It's the same choice. You're just picking left or right, red or blue. But the final stanza is a tone shift. It contradicts everything else. That means that the nonconformist take requires someone to actively ignore the first 4 stanzas. But does that invalidate the interpretation? No, not at all. You see, there's a concept called the death of the artist. You see, while Frost had a clear and well-explained message, once the poetry had been released to the public, everyone had the opportunity to consume and digest it themselves. Frost believed that those little choices were irrelevant, and pointed out the frivolous nature of stressing over mundane stress. Yet taking the poem and mining it for a deeper message is part of the process. Part of the joy and fun of literature is being able to delve into a story and create meaning from the meaningless. It's just words on a paper or a screen. Nothing means anything, yet by that very logic we prescribe meaning to everything we encounter. It matters because we make it matter. The most mundane, irrelevant moment can become a flashpoint memory that impacts the development of that person's life for years to come, a single choice cascading into countless lives. So yes, this was just a fun poem. Frost was simply poking fun at his friend. But this simple, meaningless poem was the push Edward Thomas needed to enlist in the army. He was killed in action roughly a year after enlisting, shot straight through the chest. Now, that is not to say that these 25 lines are responsible for Thomas's death, but he made a choice influenced by this poem. And that made all the difference. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be taking the next week off, but we'll return with Fences by August Wilson the following week. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share this with your friends and leave your impressions below. And until next time, Carpe Diem.